You fear death because you assume it ends everything. You treat it as a boundary between existence and nothingness. You try to avoid it in thought, speech, and life itself. Yet Shams Tabreez challenged this assumption. He said death is not what you think it is. It does not end life. It ends illusion. To him, true death was not physical, but inward. The death of the self that pretends to exist apart from truth. He called this dying before dying, a practice of dissolving what is false while still alive. You spend your days defending continuity, calling it living. But what if what you call life is merely the repetition of thought, and what you call death is the first touch of reality? You spend life resisting endings. You want permanence, identity, and control. You believe that continuity confirms existence. Every ending, therefore, feels like an attack. But Shams said fear of death is the fear of truth, because death shows how little of what you call I can endure. What you protect so fiercely, the story, the role, the idea of me, dissolves every instant. The fear does not come from death itself, but from realizing that you never owned life in the first place. If life were truly yours, would it vanish without your consent? For Shams Tabreez, death was not destruction but unveiling. He saw it as the moment when illusion ends and what is real becomes visible. He said the self that dies was never alive. It was a shadow cast by thought. To die before you die, he taught, is to witness what remains when the false disappears. This death is not the loss of being, but its revelation. In such death, awareness stands free from identity. If dying exposes truth, then perhaps what you have been calling life has only been hiding it. You say, I, as if it refers to one unbroken being. You carry memories and believe they form a single self. Yet that self shifts with every mood, every thought, every passing hour. Shams pointed out that what you call continuity is merely habit, the repetition of patterns mistaken for permanence. The I that speaks today is not the same that spoke yesterday, yet you link them through memory and call it identity. What if the continuity you defend is only the mind's refusal to see that it dies each moment? If the self changes constantly, what is it that continues at all? Shams described inner death as the end of ownership, the loss of the belief that you are the center of experience. You think you act, decide, and direct life. But this, you, exists only as a claim. Death begins when the claim collapses. You realize that thoughts think themselves, that actions arise from causes beyond control. The death of the self is the exposure of dependency. You see that nothing you call mine has ever been yours. Fear fades when you stop defending what was never real. When the I disappears, what remains to suffer loss? You cannot force surrender. It happens when resistance can no longer continue. The mind tries to secure permanence, yet every attempt fails. Shams said surrender is not choice, but recognition. The understanding that control never existed. When this recognition dawns, the struggle ends on its own. Death ceases to feel like threat because it reveals what cannot die. What surrenders is illusion, not life. The shift is quiet and rational. You see what always was. When the false ceases to defend itself, life and death no longer stand apart. Can losing control be the beginning of true freedom? Shams said that beyond the death of illusion lies a life that was never born. It does not begin after the body perishes, nor does it depend on memory or identity. It is the same awareness that existed before you called it I. When the self disappears, Being remains, silent, continuous, untouched. Life, then, is not something you possess. It reveals itself when possession ends. The self lived as if it owned life. Now life simply lives itself. What you called living was only self-preservation. What remains after death is not you. It is existence itself, unbroken and free. When the self fades, even meaning changes. You no longer search for purpose as a defense against uncertainty. Shams warned that the need for meaning is the final form of clinging. The mind wants assurance that its end serves a goal, but truth needs none. In the death of self, explanation ends. Awareness no longer depends on belief. The real is not understood. It is known without mediation. This death extends even to knowledge, not because knowledge fails, but because it completes its purpose. When nothing stands between you and what is, what meaning could remain to separate you? Shams taught that inner death is not a single event, but a continuous state. The false self dies every moment as life renews itself. Each thought ends. Each moment replaces what came before. To live truly is to die continually, to let each instant disappear without resistance. This is not tragedy but vitality. What you call death, life performs endlessly. You are not living despite death. You are living through it. Every moment that passes dies into the next, and yet being remains. If you die every second, then why fear the final one? When death has dissolved illusion, awareness reflects its source without distortion. Shams said that the one who dies inwardly no longer lives for himself, but as the real. Life, at that point, is not personal. It is expression. You do not act as a separate will. You are the movement of what truly is. Death gives life because it removes everything that obstructs reality. The one who is seeking vanishes, and only truth functions. You realize that life was never yours to begin with. If what dies is false, and what lives is real, can death still be called an ending? When you no longer resist death, you no longer live in fear. You stop protecting what is transient. Freedom appears when nothing needs preservation. Shams called this the faith of those who have died before dying, the trust in what cannot end. Life becomes effortless because it is no longer centered on survival. You act, but no one claims authorship. You love, but no one fears loss. Death, once the ultimate threat, becomes the quiet confirmation of reality. If you no longer belong to time, can anything truly be taken from you? Shams Tabreez taught that the death that gives you life is not destruction, but awakening. What perishes is illusion. What remains is truth. To die before you die is to see that existence does not belong to anyone. It simply is. The mind once divided life and death into opposites, but both are one movement, the continuous renewal of being. Every death is birth. Every ending a return to what never began. When illusion ceases, life reveals itself as death's hidden meaning. You see now that death never opposed life. It preserved it by clearing away what was false. What dies is only the dream. What lives is what never slept.